Wow, what a Monday. Orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. Now with more Zach Wilson. Yeah, Zach Wilson traded to the Denver Broncos. A lot of Broncos fans are losing their minds.
They're losing their minds because we're sitting here in the unknown and wondering, what is it going to mean for the draft? That's the big question here. I mean, I'd like to think that it doesn't change their potential plan and maybe their desire to move up if they seek a quarterback they really want. But I think part of it is, Cease, we've been to this opera before. We saw it in 2018 when the Broncos signed Case Keenum, and despite being in a QB-rich draft, said, we're good. Stayed out of the quarterback market in 2018, which of course meant they didn't draft Josh Allen, they didn't draft Lamar Jackson, and it put them behind the eight ball. I think it's sort of that unknown, or even some looking back to 2021 when the Broncos, yes, they did get Pat Surtain, but they might have had more clarity of mission if they'd taken Justin Fields. But of course, the day before the draft, they trade for Teddy Bridgewater, and that's who they rode in 2021. So I think these experiences are part of why you're seeing the reaction be the way it is in Broncos country today.
Yeah, it's the experiences and it's the predetermined opinions, Mace, because there's so many opinions about Sean Payton, which I personally don't hold, but so many fans are like, his ego is saying he can fix Jack Wilson. They got another guy for nothing. They got another arm who's better than Jarrett Stidham, maybe not by much, for nothing. Okay, that's what this is.
Yeah, and basically they traded down 49 picks from round 6 to round 7. If you go by the Jimmy Johnson draft value chart, that means they cost themselves 7.6 points of value, which is literally equivalent to the 209th pick, because most of your round 7 picks are worth 2 points or 1 point. Pick 209 is worth 8.6 points. I mean, compare that to, I believe it starts at 3,000 points for the number 1 overall pick.
Yes.
So, yes, Zach Wilson's not worth the heck of a lot in this trade. You're basically buying a relatively cheap lottery ticket. And the reason why he's valued so low, Cease, did you get the graphic that I sent you?
Let me put that up here in just a quick second. But the reason why he's so low is because, well, the Jets ruined him, or the work with Nathaniel Hackett ruined him, right?
No, he was not doing well before Nathaniel Hackett got in there. In fact, he actually had I believe he had his highest passer rating of his career. Yeah, with Nathaniel Hackett last year, 77.2, also his highest completion percentage. But if you look at the 3-year numbers, this is among 58 quarterbacks with at least 300 plays. EPA per play minus 0.161, 55 of 58 quarterbacks. Success rate 38.8%, 55 of 58. Pass rating 73.2. That's 57th of 58. I mean, he is maybe not the worst, but he's right there in the conversation over the last 3 years. And this is why I know there's that graphic floating out there on social media saying, oh, his numbers look similar to Drew Brees' first 3 years. That was 20 years ago. The standards are completely different for quarterbacks than they were then. What Drew Brees did in passer rating alone, that was 38th of 48 compared to Zach Wilson, very similar, dead last by a decent margin.
Yeah, I saw that as well floating around like, well, Drew Brees numbers before Sean Payton.
You can't do raw quarterback comparison numbers over eras because they're different.
Totally different era. And Marty Schottenheimer, we want to run the damn ball all the time. Like, hey.
Yeah. So that's why I think, focus on those numbers. It tells you why he really was worth basically nothing on the market at this point. I mean, think about that. A guy who was number 2 overall pick back in 2021, and basically he's traded for the equivalent of a bag of kicking tees and a couple of footballs.
Right.
That is absolutely wild. But, I mean, the thing is, I know why people are looking at it, and I'm going to write about this at denversports.com. Sean Payton is Mr. Reclamation Project. Kerry Collins, even Drew Brees coming off the torn labrum. Teddy Bridgewater going from backup to becoming a starter again, getting a starter's contract with Carolina after filling in for Drew Brees in 2019. As we've got a little visitor here, my daughter Charlotte coming in. She was waiting for that. She was watching and kind of stalking for a little
waiting
bit.
to pounce. Right. Hi, Charlotte.
Yes. Hi. She's very happy. You wanna say hi? Come on.
Say hi to the people, Charlotte.
Hi.
Peace.
How's your day going, Charlotte?
Tired.
You tired?
Tiring.
Yeah. You have practice tonight?
Yeah.
You should probably go rest for a little bit and then do your homework, okay?
And I'm hungry.
Well, make yourself a snack. You know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
You got Nutella and stuff in there, and you got bananas and stuff.
That's what I was going to do.
All right.
Bye.
Peace. See you, Charlotte. Busy day.
Yes, she does. Like she is always on the go, and the thing she's learning at a relatively early age is time management.
Oh yeah,
something I've been reminded of today. Although she seems to be enjoying hanging out because she's still watching the show, and now she's coming back.
And I hurt my ankle and my knee yesterday from doing dance, and so I'm probably not gonna wear my shoes, and that's gonna.
But you
be
can
sad.
still practice even though you hurt your ankle and your knee.
Yeah.
You see, injuries are not just for football players. I mean,
right.
This girl's playing hurt.
There was this one dancer at a Rocktus, which is like for the like Mid-America or like Midwest.
Yeah.
And she was sitting next to a football player, and she was more hurt than the football player.
I believe it. That Irish dancing, it takes
Exactly.
something out of you.
Yeah,
Yes.
and she still got placed in the top 30, which was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
Bye.
deal. All right. Bye, Charlotte.
Awesome.
Yeah. Don't let anyone tell you that high level competitive dancing like that is not a sport. It very much is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Great
Yes.
footwork too from the Irish
Yes.
river dancing. Yeah.
Mhm, yes.
Mm.
But
Great
yeah, like
footwork from the Broncos.
The injury stories from Irish dancing, though, that I'm becoming aware of, it's like, holy smokes. Like, it's,
Yeah.
Foot injuries, shin injuries, knee injuries. It's, it's demanding. So
It's a little bit of everything. This Zach Wilson thing, does it change the draft plan? Now, stubbornly, Mace, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say this puts out a message to people, and it confuses people. It confuses teams, right? Well, the Broncos going to move up or not. Now, does it mean maybe they can't move up or couldn't move up, or Washington staying put at 2 with Jaden Daniels, by the way? I just had to force that in there today, Mace. Like, they're drafting Jaden Daniels. I don't care about his agent. I don't care about, he's mad they went to Topgolf. Like, whatever. They're drafting Jaden Daniels. So 2 is not moving. 3 maybe, but 3 still looks like it's going to be Drake May. So is this a sign, an indication maybe the Broncos don't move up? Yeah, maybe it is. But does it change the plan for round 1 quarterback? No, I don't believe it does.
do you think maybe it means they trade down and then roll the dice to see if Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. is there at a more palatable spot while picking up a second-round pick? Again, if somebody's willing to play ball
Yes.
and offer them what they want. But do you think that is more possible than it was
Yes, and it
before?
depends on who's behind him that would want to move up. I know that the Colts want to move up bad for Malik Neighbors, but the Broncos don't have a top 7 pick.
That's
good luck
that's
with
not
that.
happening.
If maybe Roma Dunze falls to 12, but again, like when I talk about Brock Bowers or Roma Dunze or name a tackle, shouldn't the Broncos be taking that other than tackle, which is a conversation we've had, but it's got to have someone behind him that gives them something worth moving back. But I do believe that Bo Nix and yes, Michael Penix are kind of their cheese pizza in the trunk, to quote Tommy Boy. It doesn't matter if they don't get the chicken wings because they've got the cheese pizza ready to go.
Are the chicken wings JJ McCarthy or Drake May then? Is that what that we're talking about?
Sean
here?
want wingy. Yeah. I think it's JJ.
You got to turn on the fryer to get that. And sometimes you do settle for the cheese pizza in the trunk. That I would even now, that being said, if it's Zach Wilson plus Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr., that's a palatable plan. Okay. That's 2 shots. And I'm not saying that Zach Wilson has a great shot, but at least that says, okay, you've got Reclamation Project, who did have first-round talent to get drafted number 2 overall. Now, granted, that came out of the COVID year, right?
He was
he's got
yeah.
There's no doubt he has arm talent, but a lot of what he did well, don't forget, it came in that year when there were no fans in the stands. It's never been easier for quarterbacks to operate in football in our lifetime than in 2020, both in college and the pros, because you're not dealing with crowd noise. You don't have to worry about silent counts. You don't have to worry about adapting anything. You just lined up and played ball in a vacuum. And Zach Wilson did very well in that vacuum. Also, another thing about that vacuum was BYU did not play any Power 5 schools at the time because of how the schedules went during the COVID year.
Right.
So, I recall, like, for example, like he was putting up massive numbers, and then he went up against a Coastal Carolina defense that had some NFL players and struggled at the end. Remember that hastily arranged game at the end of the season?
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember watching that game and seeing Zach Wilson operate under duress and thinking, okay, now I'm not sure, because he's going against some dudes in this game that he hasn't gone against to this point in the season. So in retrospect, that game against Coastal was actually the canary in the coal mine, because what we see of Zach Wilson is he does struggle to operate under pressure. And that is, I'd say Zach Wilson working with Nathaniel Hackett didn't do him any favors last year, but it's not like he was on a good trend before with the Jets, before Nathaniel Hackett came in as the offensive coordinator, which is another reason why you may sit there and say, okay, is it probably going to work out for Zach Wilson? Probably not. But take a flyer for the cost of nothing, and then you have if you bring in Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix, you feel pretty good that one way or another you can find something viable, right? Maybe it's Sean. Maybe it's another Sean Payton Reclamation Project. Maybe it's a rookie quarterback. But in that, also in that means you're giving yourself 2 shots rather than 1. They're not necessarily great shots, but it is 2 chances, and I think that's how the Broncos are viewing this. Not a great shot, but for the cost of the difference between pick 207 and pick 256, why not? By the way, another example of the George Payton specialties. Make sure if you traded 1 pick, you got back 1 pick when you get a player. That is, no matter what happens for George Payton as a general manager going forward, to me, his legacy is getting the later pick back in these pick swap type of deals that involve players to make sure you walk out with the same number of picks that you walked in with. That's part of his legacy. If you separate out the Russell Wilson stuff, which is, basically like saying, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Exactly. I was just going to bring up more darts philosophy. It's exactly what this is. There is a nightmare scenario, which includes, yes, Spencer Rattler. I said it. And I honestly wouldn't put him as one of the 7 that George Payton talked about. I think Joe Milton, if you're going to take a chance on a day 3 guy, and yes, Rattler should be a day 3 guy, not a round 1 guy, for the love of God, not round 2, and maybe round 3 if you're generous, but like Spencer Rattler and Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham would be the worst quarterback room in the league. So there is that possibility, Mace, but I'm still sticking, perhaps stubbornly, to the fact that they will draft a first-round quarterback. It's just now, perhaps with the Wilson trade, the odds of moving up for JJ are less. The odds of taking Bo Nix might be higher, and you mentioned work under pressure. Zach Wilson was constantly compared to Pat Mahomes, not by me, not by you. I remember Steve Young praising him, of course, BYU alum himself, saying, like, he's Mahomes-like. No, he's not. You operate under pressure. That tells a lot about a quarterback. Look at Bo Nix's performance under pressure. He attacks you when he's under pressure, more so than Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or any other quarterback in this class.
Here's the thing. He also throws some gorgeous balls, right?
Yes.
Like, if you go out to training camp, you watch Zach Wilson, he'll probably have 1 wow play at practice. Like, oh my gosh. But then there'll be the other plays. I mean, unfortunately, he's not a very accurate quarterback. I mean, he will have some moments that dazzle you. He will have some moments that make you want to tear your hair from its scalp.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a Zach Wilson experience. A lot of Jets fans the last 3 years will tell you that.
Right.
So you have to accept that. I mean, but again, at this cost, why not? I don't want the Broncos to delude themselves into thinking that this is a viable strategy for finding a long-term quarterback. And again, that's my concern. I mean, like you said, Spencer Rattler. I mean, you could draft Michael Pratt in the 4th round. I mean, you'll want to see where they go, sure, but then you're really at lottery ticket, right? Bo Nix is not a lottery ticket. Bo Nix has a reasonable chance of working out to be at least a mid-tier starter. Michael Penix Jr., not a lottery ticket, even though he's got the injury concerns. There's ample evidence that shows you that he can make make the throws that you have to make as an NFL quarterback. It's a question of handling heavy pressure like he struggled to do against Michigan, and staying healthy. Okay. But there are far fewer variables, and that's why you're talking about them being potential first-round quarterbacks. And you're not talking about Spencer Rattler, who, even though there are some dynamic throws to him, and even though he did show that he could improve over the course of Senior Bowl week, even at the end of this time at South Carolina, the results were underwhelming, I think, relative to the skills that he has. And with Michael Pratt, I think he can be a reasonably accurate quarterback in the NFL. But is there enough of a dynamic component in him? Or are we talking about Michael Pratt being the type of guy who settles as a career backup? Maybe he has a 10 or 15-year career as a number 2, which wouldn't at all surprise me, by the way.
No, not at all. He'd be a damn good backup too, and starter, in my opinion. But it's going to take time. If you get a Ryan Tannehill, he's essentially your starter while the young guy gets ready. Zach Wilson doesn't get in the way of that unless he's outstanding and he's totally different and totally redeemed himself. Like, you draft Bo Nix, you're starting Bo Nix week 1. You draft Michael Penix, you're starting Michael Penix and Bo Nix week 1. Like, Zach Wilson doesn't get in the way of that in the way that a Tannehill would, because Tannehill's still, okay as a starter.
Yeah, and Tannehill might do enough to keep the job and stave off a young guy. Whereas unless Zach Wilson is in the comeback player of the year conversation, you're not talking about that. Now, I'll say this: if I'm Zach Wilson and I'm getting traded to the Broncos, I'm actually pretty happy today if I'm Zach Wilson.
Yeah, you get Sean Payton. He's going to get you good or get you gone.
Yeah, like you've got a shot here. Like, it's not a great shot, but it's a better shot than you have with the Jets of turning your career around. I think for him, you wonder if it's going to energize him a little bit. I think it will energize him. I just don't know if we're going to see the results. I mean, it's funny. I see something crossing my Twitter response to one of my posts that says, "Oh, Wilson is a known quality." Yeah, he's a known quality. What we know isn't very good, and
right.
You're hoping that he can find more than that. And again, lottery ticket. That's what this is. And I would offer this maybe, and this is another way I'd be okay with it. You and I joked about taking 2 quarterbacks in the draft. Hey, why don't you take somebody in the 1st round, and maybe you take Joe Milton in round 6? Here's your Joe Milton. Right down to the cannon arm that doesn't always seem to know where it's going.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There are actually, I can sit here and there are actually a lot of similarities between Joe Milton and Zach Wilson. They have some similar strengths to each other.
Yes.
Athletically, they have some similar strengths in terms of arm talent, and they have some similar weaknesses in terms of, you feel like when you're watching them short to intermediate, they don't have a good read on where the ball is going.
Right. And I was going to wrap up the Wilson conversation with this, Mace. I've had people ask me, like, what's the difference between him and JJ McCarthy? Oh my God. There's like a million things. One, JJ doesn't have the arm that Zach does, but 2, JJ played really good football against the nation's best. Something, as you pointed out, Zach Wilson never did.
And he played in a system that translates more to the NFL than what Zach Wilson was doing at BYU at the time.
1,000%.
And like you said, played against the best. I mean, it'd be a different conversation if it were Zach Wilson, BYU 2023 in the Big 12. But this was BYU 2020 independent, not playing anybody that at the time was in the Power 5 and not being really stressed and tested that year until that hastily arranged game at the end of the season against Coastal. And that was the one defense that looked like a Power 5 defense that was on his schedule. And it wasn't a great day for Zach Wilson. And I think that it wasn't horrible. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my God, like kind of like Michael Penix against Michigan scaring some people, but it wasn't a good day. And I think it showed some flaws that have been exacerbated as he's gotten to the next level. And oh, by the way, I mean, it's not, and here's the other thing people see, we were talking about, Courtland Sutton receivers production. Zach Wilson had Garrett Wilson for a couple of years, right?
Yep.
Garrett Wilson got his 1,000-yard seasons the last 2 years. It didn't mean Zach Wilson was playing very well.
Right.
So
1,000%. I think the move that the Broncos did today, and we're going to have an OBT2 about the jerseys. Don't you worry. We're going to get our opinions out there about that. But the move today that the Broncos did that's the most impactful on the draft is not Zach Wilson. It's adding Levi Wallace. Before we leave today on this regular OBT, I think the Wallace move could change the way they approach the draft.
It probably takes corner out. Not that it ever should have been in, but corner in round 1, I think it takes the Broncos out of the mix. You do, because now you're looking at a room of Surtain, Levi Wallace, Jaquan McMillan, and then Riley Moss and Damari Mathis. And, Wallace is there. And if Moss isn't ready, if Damari Mathis isn't ready, well, then Wallace is your starter. The other thing, and I don't think this happens, I know there's some saying, oh, you get Wallace, maybe Pat Surtain gets included in a trade. I highly doubt that for a lot of reasons, and one of them actually ties in with the uniform release. Look at how prominently the Broncos were playing up Pat Surtain today.
Right. And
you
you
go to the
even seen
team
the
store
throwback
right now.
commercial, right?
Yeah. You go to the team store and you're seeing Surtain jerseys left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing Courtland Sutton jerseys as well. So I think a lot of those were made beforehand. But the way they're positioning Pat Surtain, that doesn't sound like an organization that's interested in trading Pat Surtain. So
right.
I think even though Levi Wallace is walking in the door, this doesn't mean all of a sudden, oh, well, you could trade Surtain. No, I think what it does is it takes one possibility off the list if the Broncos stand pat at 12, and that's picking a corner.
Yep. And it might change what they think about late round corner, which they still are. It's on the list, but we'll see what they do there. Mace, we had a busy Monday, buddy. Holy cow.
I know. And on OBT2, we'll get to your favorite subject, uniforms.
Yay. Hey, Mace told me I could share my opinion. Yes. You're not going to want to miss me sharing my opinion because it might match some people out there.
Maybe. I might tell you why your opinion is wrong.
Well, let's get it on. That's OBT2 coming up 6 p.m. Mountain. We thank you very much for checking us out. It's Orange and Blue today. We're pushing our Denver sports channel. So we thank you guys for doing that. How can they help us out on YouTube, Mace?
Well, they can like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss a vid. I think that lined up pretty nicely there today.
It did. It usually does on the playback. So we'll see how it did today. We'll see you for OBT2. The draft can't get here fast enough. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying, stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty,